Hey everyone, and welcome to the Dota 2 Builds of the Week, the weekly series where I show you guys top 5 meta builds to help you get started learning new heroes in Dota 2. As always, link to my Twitch is down in the description below, and I should add that if you're interested in coming and checking us out on Twitch, we'll be doing the Dota 2 NPC, the New Player Circuit, a kind of event that I'm known for. We're going to be doing it on a more regular basis moving forward, so if you're a new player and you're interested in playing 5v5 scrims with coaches on either end, with me casting it, then be sure to check out our Twitch, which is linked below, because we'll be doing that on a regular basis moving forward, and you can find a whole bunch of VODs of prior tournaments on the YouTube channel, on my YouTube channel, actually. The way I said that was a little awkward. And if you'd like to support the series, smash the like button, because that's apparently all that YouTube cares about. And down in the description below is a link to each of the builds we're discussing today. Regardless, today we're getting started with position 1 Ursa. Now, Ursa's pretty interesting because he's kind of fallen out of the meta a little bit, but with the tournament in Saudi Arabia, we saw a lot of Ursa being played by a lot of the top tier teams, and partially because he's an absolutely excellent laner. He threatens Roshan, in particular when you are playing on the on the kind of upper half of the map, because when you are on that side of the map, you have a much more easier access to Roshan, so especially from the safe lane. So it's very important to understand why Ursa can be seen as a very effective carry. That being said, this is how he's currently being built. So essentially here, the way Ursa is being played right now is the skill build is relatively stock. This is being played very consistently. You're focusing on Fury Swipes with Earthshock and Overpower being taken as value points. Talent-wise is pretty consistent as well. But what's interesting is the way the starting items are being played. Now, I know that a lot of players might not really do this, especially low MMRs, but starting with a stick, even if it's not a perfect stick lane, is something that a lot of pro players are doing, because Ursa is a very scrappy early on fighter. This magic wand, which allows you to kind of utilize your iron branches early on, basically allows you to be extremely tanky. It gives you the mana, it gives you the health that you need to be a skirmisher. And so once you have your Wraith Band, your Phase Boots, your Morbid Mask, your Wand, and your Diffusal Blade, like, you are a very effective early game fighter. Not to mention, you can take Roshan relatively early, smoke once you have the opportunity, get in there and take Roshan. And in lower MMRs, players might not be kind of looking out for that. Higher MMRs, of course, they're going to be aware of that. But regardless, once you have your Diffusal Blade into to BKB, you're going into Blink Dagger. This is when you're fully online. You're basically going to be running guys down, right-clicking them, and just exploding them as you can. His Shard is super, super valuable, and into Basher and Abyssal Blade. This is a very core stock build, but what makes it so good is that it has a very strong early game timing. Ursa has a very, very consistent early game buildup where he is always a constant threat. From the laning stage to the mid game to the late game, Ursa is a problem if someone just simply wants to man fight. So it's a very interesting hero to be playing at the current time. Out of favor, however, is worth mentioning is the Battle Fury Ursa. You're not seeing almost any of this right now. You're seeing almost no Battle Fury Ursa. I keep it there because a lot of people say, oh, this is kind of the point in time. You either go Diffusal or you go Battle Fury, and that's how you determine kind of, the kind of game you're playing. Ursa currently is being played with the Diffusal Blade, as we're showing you here. Traditionally, you saw a lot of Battle Fury Ursas then farmed the next items, usually skipping something like a Diffusal Blade in the process. But regardless, this is how Ursa is currently being played in the pro meta. He's a pretty effective hero, and if you can sneak into a couple Roshans, then you'll find yourself in a very effective position early on. In position 2 mid, let's have a conversation about Death Prophet. Now, moving forward, this is something worth noting, that some heroes are being flexed in multiple positions. And so this is what's happening with Death Prophet. You saw a whole lot of Faith Beyond from LGD playing Death Prophet from position 3. So this build that I'm going to be showing you can be most certainly applied to position 3 Death Prophet. But she also is being flexed in mid as well, which is really interesting to see. So there's going to be situations where I'm going to be, showing you an offlane guide for a mid hero that can be flexed there, which is exactly what we're doing here today, because I think that Death Prophet is very, very flexible, but also kind of, interestingly enough, like being played in the pro meta, well, not necessarily being played in the pub meta, because she has like a 45% win rate at high MMR, in Divine and above. But when you look at the pros, when LGD's picking her non-stop, they've got to know something, right? Regardless, let's talk about how she's being built. So, very consistent to what was traditionally being played with Death Prophet offlane before the major nerfs to her Shard. However, what's being done here is you are going into one single Null Talisman as opposed to two. The skill build is still relatively straightforward. Crypto Swarm to help you last hit range creeps, Spirit Siphon to bully the lane, Silence when you start to team fight, Exorcism to push the towers. Here, you're taking talents that are relatively straightforward as well. You're taking the magic resistance as a mid offlane or tempo hero. You're taking the Spirit Siphon, the max health. You can also take the Spirit Siphon talent at level 20 if you wish. The max health is just really valuable because, you know, you want to have a very lingering presence in these fights. And then you have the Spirit Siphon cooldown later on. The Exorcism Spirits is good too. Why wouldn't it be? But, you know, you're building around Spirit Siphon and your shard a little bit. With regards to how she's being played, now from the mid, you're generally building phase boots, also viable as an offlaner as well. Also remember that power treads are useful on someone like on Death Prophet as well, because when you cast your spells, you can switch to int, and then when you're taking damage, you can switch to strength. Extremely valuable ability as well, so bear that in mind. The phase boots are valuable because it allows you to kind of hold people in place with Spirit Siphon, which is, you know, obviously kind of the core element of this build. With regards to a stock build, running into an Urn of Shadows early on is beneficial because it stacks very effectively with Spirit Siphon to do a lot of kind of like damage, well, rapid damage over time to an enemy. And then you have your Magic Wand, which once again, because you're ranged, so you don't have a built-in stout shield, and you are a kind of scrappy hero, or you're getting into the mix of the fights, right? You're not a ranged spellcaster. You're in there with Spirit Siphon. You're in there with Silence and Exorcism. So the Magic Wand really gives you that added HP and survivability you need. Yule Scepter is super valuable as well because it gives you the movement speed. It gives you the intelligence you need. It gives you the mana regeneration. It gives you a Dispel that you could use. It also can be used in conjunction with Spirit Siphon, so it has a lot of valuable elements to it that make it a very good item for Death Prophet, either in mid or in the offlane. And Faith Beyond built it pretty much every single game during the tournament. And then finally, Kaya Sanj, which amplifies everything that she wants, gives her the status resistance, gives her the strength, gives her the intelligence, makes her a tanky beast. That's exactly what you want from DP. Into her shard, which amplifies her Spirit Siphon. And then finally, and of course, like the fear element of the shard is what's super good, like that control, which is super valuable. And then finally to BKB. And, you know, from there, you can decide on extension items. Very popular if you decide not to go Yule Scepter is Lotus Orb for the Dispel, of course. You also have the option of going Shiva's Guard after the BKB. Shiva's Guard is absolutely fantastic because it basically gives you that aura presence that makes you a very difficult thing to deal with in a fight. And then finally, you know, Heaven's Halberd, if you're against the popular Ursa or a PA or a Drow or whoever needs to be disarmed, you know, even we saw Team Spirit go Sven, right? So it's been a while since we've seen a Sven, but you counter Sven with Heaven's Halberd, so it's a very good item for her as well, adding in her survivability. For position 3, we've got to talk about Collapse's Night Stalker. During the tournament in Saudi Arabia, Night Stalker was picked here and there, but like he wasn't necessarily very popular. By no means was he contested like a Tiny or a Puck, or a Zeus for that matter. But when Collapse picked him in the semifinals, went on a rampage, and literally dismantled a pro team as a Night Stalker out of the blue, people started to pay attention. So I want to show you the build and the iteration of Night Stalker that was kind of performed by Collapse at the most recent tournament that resulted in him getting a rampage and losing his damn mind. Let's talk about it. So basically, the build has been pretty consistent with regards to his skills. You are going Void up front, you're taking value points in Hunter in the night, Dark Ascension, and then whatever, you know. This is very, very cookie plate, like cookie cutter. This has always been this way. You're focusing on the Dark Ascension talents, taking the 20 strength talent at 20. Crippling Fear is pretty good as well. Regardless, this has been very staple for a while. What was different, however, was his item buildup. He actually went a plethora of Iron Branches into Tangos and Quelling Blade. Why would he do this? Well, first of all, he was able to use Tango to eat an Iron Branch in order to help his regeneration. But he rushed Helm of Iron Will, and then he went his boots. So he solidified his laning stage. He could trade very effectively with the Helm of Iron Will, and he could basically trade effectively with his boots and move and be kind of like nimble on his feet, so to speak. From there, he finishes his armlet. Once he has his armlet, he gets his wand, which frees up some backpack space as well, into phase boots. Now, he actually did not finish his phase boots. He kept his brown boots for a while in order to increase some timings, but for the average player playing this guide, finishing your phase boots is going to be valuable for a Night Stalker. Regardless, you can take that windlace, and by this time, it's well into the night, and what you have here is you have a tremendous amount of speed. You're able to get on top of your enemies and basically just punch them until they can't get punched no more. Of note, Orb of Corrosion is a great item for Night Stalker. Allows you to get on top of somebody, especially when you have Crippling Fear. Slow them, stay on top of them. Your excessive movement speed will make it so that you know, the differential between their movement speed and your movement speed, Crippling Fear will keep them silenced, and you just keep punching them until they can't get punched no more. Blink Dagger was his next item into his shard. And this is pretty interesting because what it basically did is it really provided him with like that early tempo power spike that really made him a massive nuisance. And then he ends up building BKB. So now you have this Night Stalker who's running rampant, especially at nighttime, but even during the daytime with Dark Ascension taking the appropriate fights. And he's incredibly fast with his boots and with his windlace. He has an armlet which he's hitting for an incredible amount of damage. He has Void, he has Hunter of the Night. Like, he has all the tools to be an absolute Night Stalker. And that's exactly what he was doing. And what ended up happening is he built into Basher, Abyssal Blade, and completely carried the game. Now, this build is pretty interesting because what it does is it really focused on having a lot of kind of like utility early on. He had a lot of stats up front. He solidified his Leighton with the Helm of Iron Will. He got the speed he needed from the boots and obviously from the windlace as well later on. He had the fighting potential from the magic wand. He had the healing burst. He had the mana burst. He had the straight up damage and farming capability of the armlet. And he had the initiation capabilities of a Blink Dagger. And so what ended up happening was he was able to get on the enemies and just punch them until they couldn't take it anymore. And he ended up literally solo carrying the game from the off lane as a Night Stalker. It was a tremendous thing to watch, and something that I think that really might propel Night Stalker back into the meta. I love featuring heroes for the first time on this series, and now we're talking about Phoenix from position 4 and 5. And what's interesting about Phoenix is that he's always been a kind of key part of the pro meta, thanks to the Supernova teamfight capabilities, and the fact that like heroes like Mars are popular in the meta, and Mars and Phoenix are a very like traditional combination where you can protect the egg using the arena, and then also trap everyone within the arena so the egg procs and knocks them all out, right? So it's pretty interesting, great combo hero, but also a very challenging hero to play with the way that their spells kind of utilize their health pool as a resource. But Phoenix was piloted by Taiga very often during this tournament, and we saw some incredible play, including the highest damage potential at 10 minutes in the entire tournament at one point. So it's pretty interesting to see what Phoenix is capable of. Let's talk about Phoenix. Now, this is kind of a good getting started guide for anybody looking to get started with Phoenix. Again, Phoenix is one of those heroes that has a lot of inherent complexity, so it's one of those heroes that, like, as you get more familiar with, you're going to expand your kind of repertoire of items and builds depending on the game situation. However, most people will agree that the way to kind of build Phoenix right now is to focus in on Fire Spirits, take a value point of Icarus Dive, and then take Sunray later on, taking Supernova whenever you can as your kind of bread and butter ability. At level 11, you start to take your talents. The spell amplification, the health is super valuable. A lot of people don't know this. Phoenix, super tanky, really tanky as a support, one of the tankiest supports, in fact. And then you have your Sunray max health, which is fantastic, and your Supernova hit count, which lets you kind of last a little later on in the later stages of the game when attack speeds get much faster. Regardless, what you're doing here is you are taking a lot of regeneration up front. You have to, because Fire Spirits takes 20% of your HP. Sunray takes your HP. So it's one of those situations where you have to actually kind of overload on regen in the lane, and it's not uncommon for you to even take something like a Salve here as well. But it is a little heavy. You are going to want to get Tranquil Boots. Usually with Phoenix, you actually get the Ring of Regen first, not the Boots or the Windlace. So just make note of that because of your use of your health pool being so frequent. Magic Wand, freeing up the space here, right, collapsing those items, into Urn of Shadows. Now, this is great because Urn of Shadows allows you to do additional damage in conjunction with Fire Spirit and Sunray. It also works very well for you because it later builds into, once you build your Shard, which allows you to cast Sunray during Supernova, it allows you to build a Vessel, which increases your HP, which is fantastic because, again, Phoenix is a very tanky support, so having something like a Vessel is a very good idea. Into something like Yule Scepter, because Yule Scepter is a great item. First of all, it's great as a support item in general, just if you're against an Axe, if you're against an LC, if you're against a Troll, if you're, there's many uses for the Yule Scepter. What's interesting about Yule Scepter as well is it can be cast during Icarus Dive. So in the event that you ever are silenced during Icarus Dive, and you're going to basically just whip right back around to where you started and die, you can actually use the Yule Scepter to basically purge yourself of the silence and cancel your Icarus Dive, which can be very valuable. A few optional items worth noting here. Obviously, instead of going Yule Scepter, it might be a game where you need a Force Staff, a Glimmer. It might be a game where you're rushing something like your Refresher Orb, because again, you're a team fight specialist. You might even want to go Holy Locket for a Sunray healing build. But one item that a lot of people like to build is Headrest because of the amount of HP you utilize on your own. So don't sleep on building an early on Headrest if you find yourself not able to sustain your lane and your HP pool because you're using way too much spells and kind of costing yourself way too much health. But anyways, this is a little quick primer on how to play Phoenix. Again, complicated hero, but one that has a lot of potential, especially if you like team fighting at lower MMRs. Now, I don't know about you, but I was pretty surprised when during the tournament in Saudi Arabia, you had Jakiro being picked as often as he was. I mean, he wasn't like the most popular picked hero by any means, but the fact that Jakiro was being picked was pretty interesting because you don't usually see him very often in the pro meta. And Jakiro is one of those heroes that we always talk about being an excellent beginner hero, an excellent hero for new players, because he kind of does everything you need. He's got a stun, although it's a little unreliable. He's got excellent wave clear. He's a strong laner. He has a great ultimate that can really hold off areas in the map and save objectives. He has a very effective tower push if you get his shard. And overall, like, he's just a good hero. Like, he can kind of do it all. He only suffers from a lack of mobility, really, and you know, if someone gets on top of you, you just explode. But regardless, Jakiro is an interesting hero. That rhymed, but I didn't mean to do that. Anyways, let's talk about how he's being built here. So basically, the way he's currently being built is, of course, you're bringing a Sentry Ward to deblock your camp or to block the enemy hard camp if that's what you choose to do. You are focusing on some regeneration up front. You are going to be building a Magic Wand as position 5 because, you know, you're going to be basically holding it for the whole game as a pos 5. Now, Jakiro does have mana issues. If you're out of mana, you feel really bad in the lane. He doesn't trade as well as others could. So you're seeing a lot of pros build Ring of Basilius and Arcane Boots. Gives you the ability to cast Dual Breath more often. It's also worth noting that the important thing about the Dual Breath is not just the damage that it does. This is something that Zeke Exotics always... I've heard him say it a million times in his replay analysis that he does for people. He always says, if you're using Dual Breath, don't just use it as damage. Use it so you can trade. Use it for the movement and attack speed slow, so that you can trade more effectively as well and amplify the amount of damage you're doing. It's not valuable because of the burn damage. It's valuable because of this attack and move speed slow. So anyways, something worth noting. So anyways, the Ring of Basilius is helpful into the Arcane Boots. Magic Wand, of course. You just assemble the Arcane Boots to build a Aether Lens and then complete your Tranquil Boots later on. Then from there, you use a Yule Scepter. Why is Yule Scepter good on Jakiro specifically? Well, because it can be used to set up Ice Path. You Yule Scepter someone up in the air, you cast Ice Path beneath their feet, they land, they're stunned, right? That is kind of the way that Yule Scepter is being utilized as well. Obviously, it has defensive capabilities as well. Another great item on Jakiro, which is often being built, is Rod of Ados. He doesn't have a reliable stun, but you can also use Rod of Ados to land Ice Path as well, similar in the way that you would use Yule Scepter. It also gives him some very valuable catch, something that if a team lacks, you might want to consider getting a Rod. From there, Veil of Discord, a very popular kind of extension item, especially for those that do build the Ring of Basilius. You build a Ring of Basilius, and then you build yourself a Veil of Discord. You're providing increased damage from all spells, whether they be magical or physical, by 18%, which is pretty significant. And hey, would you believe it? You do a lot of magical damage. Isn't that exciting, right? So anyways, very interesting hero to play, and my favorite thing to do, my absolute favorite thing to do, even though it's dumb, is to build Ag Scepter. It really makes a macro power way better. It pierces spell immunity, it makes it absolutely massive. You basically just write off entire sections of the map. It's greedy as hell, but especially if you're at low MMR, you're gonna get the Ags, and you're gonna have a team fight where people pop BKB and just stand in your macro power thinking that they're invulnerable, and they're just gonna melt, and they'll be like, "What the hell happened?" And they wouldn't even, yes, you're relying on Dota players being bad Dota players, but guess what? Anyways, that's all for this week. Thanks so much for watching, and a very special thank you to all of our wonderful subscribers. We'll see you in the next Dota 2 video.